listening for other report outs. We've got a great agenda, some really important patient-centred projects. Thank you very much. Sorry, you caught me out as I was writing some notes. Really positive, and it is really tricky, isn't it, in terms of we don't want lots of incidents to investigate, but we do want to do the improvement on the investigation. So yeah, absolutely recognise that sort of challenge. So okay, we are pretty much perfectly on time. So as usual, we take questions at the end. So please do be kind of noting those down and come back in when we've got about 10 minutes at the end of the session. So can I hand over to Ellie on theatre utilisation?
Yes, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Ellie Kitchen. I am business manager in plastic surgery, and I've been doing a project on improving the theatre utilisation across all of the plastic surgery theatres. Next slide, please. Thank you. So our problems and challenges are across all theatres. Plastic surgery are rarely reaching their 86% utilisation baseline. There's been some difficult engagement from key stakeholders, a high level of on-the-day cancellations and DNAs, a high number of hours lost to late starts and early finishes, and a high level of local anaesthetic cases going through Jubilee. And this is one of the 7 commitments this year, is to make sure we utilise all of our resources. So we need to make sure that we're utilising our Jubilee and theatres to the maximum to make sure that we're getting the right cases through. Next slide, please. So we have taken some actions where we've done a robust pre-scheduling and scheduling meetings, we've had engagement from the teams, and issues have been flagged earlier with proactive problem solving. We've also engaged with other teams from AMS and Neuro to take learning from their sort of scheduling as well, to see if there was anything that we were missing from a plastic surgery point of view. We've done some work on our DNAs and cancelled on the day. We've been doing reminder phone calls to the patients 48 hours prior to TCI to ensure that we've got sufficient time to backfill those gaps. And we're also now making use of the theatre text message reminder system and have encouraged that across the whole of TRS, so not just plastic surgery. We've been looking at the LA and GA split in Jubilee theatres and swapping our consultants into hand unit where possible to better utilise the general anaesthetic capacity. And we've also discussed in an open forum the local and GA splits so other consultants are aware. We've been monitoring our late starts and early finishes, and we have seen a reduction in wasted hours due to this. We've had an improvement in late starts. The early finishes, there's still some work to be done, because often there's complex cases with plus or minus to the procedures, and it's sometimes hard to gauge. And then we have had utilisation breakdown per theatre, so full breakdown per month per list of early finishes, late starts, DNAs, and individual consultants have been approached to encourage better utilisation. Next slide, please. So our PDSA cycle is all based on retrospective data. So we're root cause analysis on each list to work out what has gone wrong and if there was anything that we could have done to improve it prior to the list, or whether it was all stuff that was on the day, so nothing that we could have done in advance. Next slide, please. And this is a breakdown of sort of month data. We're looking at the predicted utilisation, scheduling tool utilisation, touch time utilisation, and in-session utilisation with turnaround time to try and gauge an average across the board and where it is we're going wrong. So the scheduling utilisation and touch time utilisation is really close. So the data's not skewed in that way, and we're looking at sort of how many cancellations on the day there's been, and where the patients sit within those lists so we can gauge things. Next slide, please. And this just shows our baseline against that 86%. So we're sort of nearly there, and the ones that we're quite lower down, that tends to be because there's been a big cancellation. But we're then also conscious that we don't want to go too over the top of the 100% because the teams are staying late and things like that, so not great for staff morale. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this shows us what's gone well. So in September 24, Wharfdale utilisation was scheduled at 74% and was delivered at 61%. In January, we did a big push and did run 3 theatres side by side with 30 patients. So we scheduled at 90% utilisation and delivered at 89. And then in February, we scheduled at 96% utilisation and delivered at 90. Across Jubilee theatres in January 25, we scheduled at 90% but delivered at 73. In February, we were scheduling at 95 and delivered at 87. And in March, we scheduled at 87 and delivered at 82. So we've definitely come up the chart across those 2 theatres. And looking at our late starts and early finishes and hours lost, if we look across the bottom purple chart, we've sort of gone down, up and down and plateaued. So we're still trying to make some steady progress with that. And then our blue and orange chart is our DNAs. So the blues are pre-phone calls and pre sort of intervention, and then orange is the post phone calls and post us getting involved. So we've seen a massive drop in avoidable DNAs, which has made a big difference across the hand unit particularly. Next slide, please. And then the outcome. So engagement's been difficult and slow with some pushback from consultants and theatre teams. And that sounds really negative, but some of the pushback has been where we've been pushing big lists and 30 cases. The theatre teams have been worried about burnout, that we can't sort of sustain that level of activity. So that's prompted some more collaborative work in to try and balance lists. So although we've got heavy lists, we've sort of got some complex and some easier cases to make sure that it's balanced for the theatre teams that way. We've seen improvements in Jubilee and Wharfdale, although it's not consistent and it is taking time weekly to ensure the smooth running. So it's not been a case of jobs done and we walk away. We constantly have to keep an eye on things. And additional issues have been identified in hand unit theatres where trauma patients are being put on elective lists and vice versa. So it's slightly skewing the data of our utilisation. So our next steps are to focus on the hand unit utilisation and work with the theatre teams to keep moving in the right direction to ensure that we are utilising everything we can, and to rerun the DNA data to ensure we've got some continuous improvement there. Next slide, please. And then it's just what we would have done differently. So I think maybe in hindsight, concentrating on one area at a time would have been a bit easier. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach with scheduling and utilisation across 4 different theatres. And I think I'd share the data with consultants in an open forum a bit earlier because it did spark some really good conversations. And I think initially I was a bit put off by doing that, thinking it might not have been received greatly. But overall, there has been some good engagement to help try and get things where we are. But that's it from me, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Really appreciate it. And there's some really good learning there. And you know, as we think about how we managed to bring our waiting times down for people, for our patients, you know, that this is absolutely key, isn't it? So really appreciate the work. So let's move on to Charlotte and the gynae triage rates.
Perfect, thank you. Hello, my name is Charlotte. I'm the Service Manager for Women CSU. Today I'm reporting out about our efforts to reduce the wait time for routine gynecology triage. Next slide, please. So just to summarise the starting position, we had a significant routine gynecology triage backlog. Just to clarify, that doesn't include 2-week wait or urgent triage referrals. The average wait time was around 14 weeks, and we had 2,000 referrals that were awaiting triage, despite the significant consultant resource job plan for triage. There were further delays caused by untimely admin action of the triage outcomes as well. And there were, at some points, it meant that patients were waiting around 14 weeks just to be told that their referral had been rejected because there wasn't sufficient information or the scan request hadn't been included. So they'd waited all that time just to be told that they had to be re-referred. So it had a real impact on patient experience. And also it really had an impact on our consultants as well, because it was really demoralising to have that feedback from the GPs all of the time. Next slide, please. So I'm not sure if these are my slides, just to some of the information is not fully done. Okay. So I'll just explain what the actions were taken to tackle the issue. What we immediately needed to do was understand why the PAs, or the amount of time consultants would job plan to an activity, was insufficient to meet the triage demand. So I first undertook a time in motion exercise, which audited how long it took each consultant to triage each referral. This enabled me to understand the average triage time per referral, as well as the number of referrals each consultant could do per PA, or 4-hour session. Although the average time varied, I established that the average potential number of referrals triage per session was around 60, but the consultants were sticking to a rigid target of 35 per session. So I then took my findings to the consultants. We had a really honest conversation about our triage position and the need to remove the fixed target that had been set years earlier for now irrelevant reasons. We agreed that the consultants would now triage as many referrals as they could per session, recognising that some referrals are more complex than others. So we would expect some variation in the numbers triaged per week rather than a set amount of 35. We also encourage the consultants to implement daily management of triage. So we encourage them to triage little and often rather than using the full 4 hours on a Monday afternoon, for example, just to make it more manageable and ultimately keep them motivated. It's not something that the consultants enjoy. We've also adopted this within our admin team too. So we action the triage outcomes every day to prevent further delays also. Our consultants also love a little competition. So I've created a mini production board with the triage, with all of the clinic referral criteria, the wait time information for certain clinics, for example, and also, with their permission, a pivot table which shows how many referrals each consultant triage per session, how much has been done across the team all week. And that's really improved the visibility of our data and performance. It's also enabled me to create a realistic trajectory, which showed me and the consultants that we could reduce the backlog without asking them to do more than their allocated time or put more resource into it. We just needed to work in a different way. Next slide, please. So all of these actions have led to a real improvement in our triage position. The triage wait time is currently 5 weeks. The triage waiting list size is reduced by 59%. And there's also fewer delays from an admin perspective, and it's also had an improvement on patient experience because they're not waiting so long to be told that they need to be re-referred. Next slide, please. So the real positive for me was the engagement from our lead clinician. From the start, he's been motivated, he understood the problem, and he led the consultants by example. So he started to triage a few referrals each day and showed that to the consultants that it could be done, and it wasn't too difficult for them to do. Without his engagement, the progress would definitely have been slower. And also I just want to highlight the power of the data as well from the time in motion exercise. It really visibly demonstrated to all that we didn't need more resource to triage, we just needed to work differently and in more of an efficient way. Next slide, please. In hindsight, very similar to Ellie, I think I would have approached the consultants from the start. I'd done the audit exercise, and it was really useful but it didn't represent the consultant's experience of triage. It didn't include the time it took for the consultants to email other consultants asking for advice or dictating letters. So it was initially difficult for the consultants to accept that more could be done within the time that they'd been given. I really had to reiterate that the point of the exercise was to demonstrate the need to remove the fixed target of 35, but if I'd involved them from the start, they'd have probably understood that more. And in terms of next steps, obviously 5 weeks is still not good enough. We still want to maintain the trust target of triage in a timely manner. We're working to continuously reduce the wait time, and then once we're maintaining the triage turnaround time rather than backlog clearance, we're looking to reallocate some of the PAs to clinics, for example, to reduce the wait times further. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Really, really good work. And just the way I think it's really a thing that we all do, but kind of that's it. it's fantastic. It's not just that's it. Do you see what I mean? So yeah, just our own language about what we're doing, I think is really important, because you've made a massive difference to our patients by doing that work. So really appreciate that.